Hey guys, how you going? This is VaulSC. Welcome back to my coverage of the ITS event that I was at last weekend, in which we used the Soldiers of Fortune special variant of ITS. So you're allowed to take up to 75 points worth of mercenaries at the cost of an extra SWC. And I must say, everybody except for me and my friend coming down from out of town, actually didn't use the mercenaries. And round 4, we're up against a Nomads player, and no mercenaries being used. So that's interesting, but we'll play nonetheless. And the mission is going to be engineering deck. So let's recap. After day 1, I got a major victory round 1, a minor victory round 2. We got what was scored as a major victory in round 3, but it should have been a minor victory. And with only 10 people participating in this event, I was undefeated after day 1. One interesting scenario came up in terms of like OTM, the infiNity computer system that tracks tournaments and sort of, matches players, does pairings, does all the data. The system thought that I should, as me as the top ranked player at that time, at the top of the table, the system thought that I should play the very bottom player. And we were looking at that going, what? We don't really want, the player who's gone undefeated to play against the guy who's currently coming last. That doesn't quite seem right. And they were explaining to me that the guy at the bottom had just played all of the other people who were down at the bottom, and the system needed to sort of headhunt the correct things, and I'd already beaten up the people who are in the mid, top tables. So that was what was determined, but luckily, we left it to the umpire, the tournament organizer, overnight to just do a bit of rejigging, and he managed to pair me up with somebody who was closer to the middle of the pack. So this is not the player who was at the bottom of the rankings, just somebody from the middle. I personally felt like, to test the player who's gone undefeated, give that person the toughest opponents if possible. Like my friend Hexa coming down from Auckland was also, he'd lost one game, but he's like second in the New Zealand rankings behind me at the moment. Also Chris, who I was staying with, aka Fathom on the forums, he does pretty well in the Wellington meta. They could have given me him, but it's not really a subjective matter of just giving you opponents at random or by just a whimsical choice. They've just got to figure out a way of doing it. So this opponent playing Nomads, let's take a look. Interesting Nomads list. I must say that it's very different from my own personal style of playing Nomads, and it's missing a lot of the staple Nomads things that a lot of people, write home about. It's very common to see the intruder, either the HMG or the sniper. That's not here in this list. Very common to see the heckler jammer nowadays. He has it in his other list, but not in this particular list. It's very common to see such things as the Kreezer Borak or Zeros or any Spectres, that sort of thing, but just completely missing from this list. We do have a Bandit Killer Hacker. I do like that profile. Mary Problems, solid, especially since she's going to be useful in some of the other missions in this event. Securitate Lieutenant, fine. But I must ask the question, if you're going to spend 13 points on the... Sorry, actually, back the truck up for a second. I knew that there was a Securitate in this list somewhere, and I've reconstructed this from memory. It hasn't come from an army code. This may not have been as lieutenant. So he may well have had, the Taskmaster as the lieutenant profile. I just don't know. But my comment is that why is this model not a... what do you call those guys? Puppet Master. So you realize you can take a 12-point Puppet Master and make that counterintelligence and then make something else a lieutenant. I suppose it's because you can't make the Puppet Master a lieutenant. That's why he's doing it. But still, if you're going to run this kind of Nomads lists, I really think that having counterintelligence in there is going to be useful. Just my thought, though. So I can understand the Securitate Lieutenant, cheap lieutenant at the back, good willpower. Zoe and Pywell. I do find them expensive personally, but if you're going to take a lot of remotes and you're going to have an engineer anyway, not bad. And Pywell can actually fight quite well with ODD and sensor and that kind of thing. And of course, Zoe's a good specialist, willpower 15. So they're not bad, they're just quite pricey, and you just got to make sure that you're going to get some value out of them. I believe 2 Zonbots are hooked up to Zoe herself for repairing his robots. He does have a Hellcat's Spitfire, very solid. Taskmaster, I've never particularly liked it because its role is starting from your deployment zone, moving out and shooting things. And at a similar points rating to the Kreezer, it's nowhere near as good as the Kreezer is from shooting from deployment zone range because Kreezer has an HMG. It's got full auto level 2. But if you're going to defend your deployment zone and try and be tricky with it, maybe he can work. I just don't think he's as good a profile comparatively. Vertigo's on. This is quite bold. What you're saying here is you're going to be getting a repeater down and spotlighting your opponent and then hitting them with the Vertigo's on's missiles. In all my years of playing infiNity, I've never seen this work. I've tried it a couple of times, never really got it off the ground. We'll see if my opponent is able to do something with it though. The Evo Hacker, I feel like this is more of a carryover for the other missions that he may run this list for, like Transmission Matrix and Tic-Tac-Toe. So fine that it's there, happy with that. A couple of Jaguars, most people use the 10-point chain rifle smoke grenades version, whereas he's taking the Panzerfaust guy that doesn't even have smoke grenades. Yes, he can be an annoying ARO piece, but any old HMG can just take him down, and he's terrible against, smoke HMG tricks, that kind of thing. 0.5 SWCs, I don't think they're bad. I think they're actually okay, but if you're going to be using them as cheerleaders, I think the chain rifle deployment zone defense is probably better. I have run this profile before, but I don't usually take two of them. I usually just happen to run one of them because the model looks like he's got a Panzerfaust. Morlocks, I believe he's running the EM CCW version. I personally prefer the assault pistol version, but hey, maybe he did have the assault pistol. That might explain why there's 6 points missing from my list recreation. So again, apologies to my opponent that I've just tried to base these profiles and lists on the photos I've got in my recollection of the game. So let's go to it now. We'll take a look at this game of Engineering Deck. So, my opponent, I believe, picks the table side that he prefers, and we'll take a look at that. Let's grab the pen. Get a nice pink. So my deployment zone is going to be over here, so that's Aleph. And his deployment is going to be over here for Nomads. And he's going to be deploying behind that. I'm going to be deploying behind this. This is, again, Engineering Deck. Sorry, that's the forward deployment zone, so everything else is behind there. And I chose to take the second turn, as I quite often do, and as you guys are well used to me doing so in my YouTube bat reps. At the time in this game, when my opponent heard that I was just going to go straight for second turn, even though I was going to be deploying first, so that double disadvantage, he kind of made a comment, like, "Oh, really? Like, second turn? Like, you're going second and you're going to, you're deploying second, you're going to take second?" Just something to that effect. And that's the kind of comment that I hear sometimes around the internet as well, and social media. For infiNity players to be like, yeah, dude, like, you serious? You want to let me attack you and let me deploy after you? So I'm going to see where your stuff is, and I'm going to be able to deploy opposite it and just attack you. You really feel like you can survive that for 3 turns? And fair enough. I mean, there are some people, I guess, who haven't really encountered that style, or maybe legitimately they're right. Maybe that is a terrible way to play. Over 4 years, maybe 5 years, coming up to 5 years of playing infiNity pretty solidly and analyzing my game in a lot of depth, as you guys can tell from YouTube, I think you guys know by now that, yes, you can win by just going outright for second. And, I said to him, well, that's I'm happy with my decision, and we'll see what happens at the end of the game. But I think you can sort of appreciate, can't you, that this is a mission where you want to go second because it's about the last game round scoring, and it's about picking up 3 out of the 5 of the objectives or moving into the room, and that's much easier to do if you're going second. Secondarily, if I do go first, if he does have jammers that I don't know about, the problem there is that Nomads are very good at defense. They have a lot of camo stuff, they have a lot of mines, crazy koalas, perimeter weapons, jammers, that kind of thing. And, how much damage am I realistically going to do? And I've not really built a list for alpha striking, I've built a list for mission completion. On top of that, it's Nomads. What's the worst that the Nomad player can do to you? Let's have a look. Maybe Brando Castro. So if he's superior, deploys as a reserve trooper right into, the dead zone in front of my deployment zone and starts attacking. Maybe he takes out Scarface, or maybe he eliminates my lieutenant if he's really lucky, that kind of thing. Am I dead in the water? No, not really. I mean, I can just keep holding out and sort of just waiting around and stalling the game out. Even if I lose 1/2 to 2/3 of my army, it's still possible to win at the end. And, if he doesn't do much damage, then it'll be very easy to win. So you can sort of see the theory behind it, and sometimes it's about confidence as well. But I must say this, getting that sort of comment that, and this is not disparaging to my opponent, you know, he may have been right. Getting that comment that it's like unusual to take second turn in that context, it's really more about the matchup and the scenario. Let's say that my opponent was playing Vanilla Islam. Do I take second right off the bat? No, I take first, because I don't want to get hit by those Delamis. I don't want to get hit by Aljabal and Fides and Tariq charging my line. I want to go first and, you know, get into the board and prevent myself from like dying to those specific units and try and make it a long game. If I'm up against a combined army player who has a track record of running the Avatar Speculo combination, like there's a guy in our meta who's done that 2 years in a row for a big tournament, if I'm up against him, do I take second turn? No, I'm going first, because I don't want to get hit by a Speculo with Strategos level 3 backing it up. So just wanted to make that commentary about first versus second turn. Let's have a look at it. Here's my deployment. Alrighty. So my lieutenant's right here at the top. This is the Scarface list that has the Mark II hacker in it. That's a Naga multi-sniper, and I'm covering the battlefield in quite a long way, really, and covering across here. So this is going to be a really strong aero piece. Netrod scattered out into the field, HVT on the side of the board. We've got a flashball spot just watching this side of the board here. Note the engineering deck does not allow drop troopers to just land in on top of the table. They have to walk on the side, so I'm defending that side. We've got a bot over here, and there's a flash pulse over here, and everything else towards the middle. Let's go have a look at it. You can see that I've actually landed a net rod on top of the building here where the lieutenant is prone. So flash pulse, baggage, another flash pulse watching the back line, another net rod out in the midfield. You can sort of see where the objectives are as well that we're going to be going for in this game. Love the Elvis billboard, by the way. So my back line, we have Dakini, HMG. That's going to be set up with assisted fire from this Evo bot over here. Our Myrmidon, who's attached to the Xenotech, so the Myrmidon's going to be using the Xenotech to move through into the building and plant the multi-scanner in here, and then leave the Xenotech in the building 4 points later on. That's my Naga Fort Observer. I've got a Krakot Renegade over there, just right behind the objective, trying to be prone, get some cover. Well, not get some cover, it can't deploy there, can't gain cover with Impetuous. Scarface and Cordelia on the left-hand flank, and there you go. My opponent, okay, so this is his left-hand side. He's got a little helper bot next to this flash pulse bot. This is from Zoe. Then he's got a, what do you call this guy? Morlock, about ready to move towards my netrod and destroy it. There's a camo marker out in the midfield here, and then there's another camo marker on the other side of the table. After playing through most of his first turn, and maybe even part of his second, I can't 100% remember. Oh, by the way, there's a Jaguar here with the Panzerfaust. My opponent did the old, you know, put all his guys on the board, put all the camo markers out there, and start playing. And look, I've got to be fair to him. This happens to me. This happens to the best of us. He got partway through the game before realizing, oh shoot, I've put 2 camo markers on the table that are supposed to be Heckler Jammers, and they're actually in the other list. They're not even in this list. So a bit of embarrassment there for him. I felt bad for him. Luckily, they hadn't jammed anything or interacted with my models in any way, so it was fairly clean to remove them. But, you know, on a philosophical note, what do you do when, you know, your opponent sort of played a model there and it's not supposed to be on the table? And good of them for owning up about it. But I personally think it's just better to have a nice, you know, calm conversation as adults about it and not do anything too extreme. I think it would be too extreme to say to the guy, oh, you've messed up. Okay, it's a 10-0 victory to me. Now it's a forfeit. That's just too extreme. On the other extreme, it's not really okay to say, okay, well, we'll just you know, play on, you know, it's honest mistake. You can't really do that if their models have interacted with yours and have actually impacted the game. So you need to sort of just have a compromise conversation about rolling certain things back and just be sensible about it and friendly about it and sporting about it. So luckily, no hecklers to deal with this game. Middle of his deployment zone, we have a Warcore, and this is a Xenotech attached to the Warcore. I don't know if you can do that, but I think you can. Taskmaster with his 2 little perimeter weapons there, and that's Zoe. Pywell is somewhere onto the flank on that side. He's got his HVT around here, and that's one of the other Morlocks ready to move out towards my line, towards where Scarface is sitting. This is a bandit killer hacker deploying in front of the building, preparing to move in there and just get ready to defend the room. Another Panzerfaust on the building to his right-hand side. He's got a flashball spot over here. Have I included that in his list? Have I factored that in? Yep, transconductor's on. He's got another little helper bot for Zoe, and then there's Pyrewell on the side, and then there's the camo marker that's actually not a camo marker because it's not in his list, so that'll be taken off the table shortly. In the building, we've got an Evo repeater and the Securitate we talked about earlier. Note that this is the same table that I played on in Game 2, if you guys were wondering. Small tournament, sometimes you have to replay the same table. The only thing different about this table is that we've moved the objective room into the middle because of engineering deck. This is a hidden deployment photo of my Mark II assault hacker. I was comfortable doing that, seeing that he hadn't deployed any sensor bots, and Pyrewell was on the other side of the table, so I wasn't expecting Pyrewell to come all the way to the middle just to censor me. That was a risk, but I was willing to take it. And of course, I think Pyrewell is actually hackable. Let's just check that. Pyrewell. Oh, she's got a repeater, so that would have been awkward. I mean, it is hackable, but Mary problems probably would have got me. Other half of my reserve deployment is the Mark V on the right hand side of the table for me. My opponent has this Vertigo's, or not Vertigo's on, what do you call this thing? I think it is a Vertigo's on. Yeah, Vertigo's on smart missile launcher at the back. Mary Problems is around here somewhere. There she is there, just behind the wall, just in front of where that bot is. She's going to be moving up and throwing some pitches down. Okay, so my opponent goes first, and it's Impetuous Phase, and he's moving up with the Morlock towards this thing to try and destroy this. And I figured, well, I can't see anything on the table that is likely to be an intruder, and I can't see any HMGs, and you know, to be honest, his list does seem to be weak at long range. So I'm thinking, well, why the hell not? Just activate the Naga sniper now, and what's it going to do about it? And I can just fire a shot at his Morlock and just get things started. So that happens, and the Morlock throws down some smoke and does manage to aero dodge with the smoke successfully. So you can see him out in the street there, throwing a smoke grenade onto the position of the net rod. The other one on the other side also moves across, doesn't come into line of sight of anybody, and just comes up behind this red vehicle over here, halfway line. Bandit Killer Hacker moves into the room, engineering room, and its position here, note that this wall is closest to my deployment zone, this one's closest to his deployment zone, so he's come on over to this corner, near to my door here, if that makes sense. So we've got that. Then we've got Zoe, because she's not being covered by any arrows watching the table, moves across the planter or around the planter, and presses the button on the objective to score and capture that objective in the name of the Nomads. There she is there, moving away from it, back to cover, and spent a couple of orders, so that's been collected. Pyrewell coming around the corner here, and setting up a position on the flank. What he's able to do is possibly go after this this Morat. I think the Morat is in the process of sort of dodging out of the way of Pyrewell's combi rifle at this point, and I believe he does successfully do that, just getting behind the cover of this thing. Note that there's also a Morlock having thrown a smoke grenade here for some reason. Can't remember why. Maybe I did have an arrow, but there is a smoke grenade being placed. Love this photograph. You can get a sense of like the anger of this Morlock. You know, the net rod was looking at him funny, so he really just like has a charging run up as he swings his blade to wreck it. Oh goodness me! So that net rod's destroyed. Next up, comes up towards the position of the Naga, and what he's trying to do here is threaten the chain rifle, and I want to keep my Naga alive for as long as possible. Yes, I can respond to him and then go dog it, but, you know, the Naga's in such a good position because there are some long fire lanes, and again, his ranged game is weak. He's got no HMGs, he's got no sniper rifles. The best long-range gun, you know, is maybe the missile launcher from the Vertigo's on, which can only fire once, and he's got to try and get me hacked to spotlight me, so it's just worth keeping the Naga alive for future turns, so I'm trying to dodge out of the way of the chain rifle at this point. That happens, so the Naga steps down and is in total cover now and is not watching the table, so the Warcore is moving up towards the room with the Xenotech to move in there. We also have the, Pyrewell going into suppression fire. Note that she's watching towards my objective where the Krakot Renegade is positioned, and there's a a Morlock behind this red vehicle as well. There was a smoke grenade there. So suppression fire just really angling towards my guys. I will be able to shoot back though with a HMG and possibly a Naga sniper as well. So suppression fire earlier on in the game, as you guys know, not the strongest thing. It is more powerful in the later game. When your opponent has a lot of time on their hands, they don't need to go for objectives necessarily, and have all of their guns available to them, suppression fire can be a bit weak. So again, camo marker moving out, but in fact realizing that that camo marker is actually not in the game, so removing it. And after all, no matter what is spent, it comes back to me. And let's just revisit that comment. That's surprise that I'm taking second turn. Well, Nomad haven't had an opportunity to do damage there and take a whole turn, but nothing died, like nothing at all. Not even one thing is dead. And now we've got an entire turn to go after objectives and shoot at things that are out in the midfield. So you can sort of see sense in going second in this sort of context, right, against Nomads in this scenario. I get it though, sometimes going second's a bad idea. We'll talk a bit more about that in my next game where, we actually really take a bit of a curb stomping in the Alpha Strike. We'll get to that later. Alpha Aleph, turn 1. So assisted fire goes down onto the Dakini with a HMG. He's then pulling around the corner to try and shoot at the Morlock. Assisted fire, obviously, and mimetism, and the bot with HMG does very well here and destroys the Morlock as we would expect him to. Pretty good gun for doing that. He's also able to go after this Jaguar and kill him as well. So, I mean, that's the way to do it. It's just a nice clean move out with the Dakini HMG. I can repair the Dakini later if I need to. It's just very solid, safe play and very, very textbook infiNity stuff here. Just using your best arrow clearing piece to go after the arrows who happen to be watching the board in positions that are maybe disadvantageous for them. We then get to a point where I can actually move out and go after Pywell over here, his bot, with my HMG and do that. And assisted fire, obviously going to be quite strong going up against Pywell. It's going to be long range for Pywell, and he's going to be up against mimetism, and the HMG is going to, do a fair bit of damage there. Realizing though that the suppression fire is still active, and a better way to do it, like after spending one order attempting that with the Dakini, realizing though that the Naga can actually move to the corner of this building behind the Lieutenant and just barely get line of sight to Pywell, who's on this corner here. So I managed to just get like a dotted line right through to where the silhouette of Pywell was, and this is a much better much better shootout for me, because I'm at perfect range with the sniper, and although I'm up against ODD, he's going to have to break suppression fire, try dodging, getting out of there, and all I need is just one low number. I think I'm hitting on 6s on 2 dice with the Naga. So as soon as I get something through, that's going to clear Pywell out. So she does manage to do that. I think the Dakini, can't remember whether the Dakini took a hit or not, but Naga, you can see the long range position, and you can also appreciate that Pywell's there in the lighting effect, and that goes quite well for the Naga. So there you go, unconscious. Pywell drops down, and for a few orders here I actually forget that he can actually be revived by the Palbot that's about around the corner, or the Yaozao, whatever you call it. What do they call them in Nomads? Zondbots. Alright, there you go, Zondbots. This enables me to bring in my Naga to that objective that was previously being covered by Pywell and the Morlock and the Jaguar, and it's just a simple matter of turning the objective on and going back into marker state or whatever I need to do. So just textbook stuff, really, textbook stuff. Okay, so with that having happened, the posthuman moves up onto the other objective on my other flank and goes to grab that as well, and no reason why not. I have a Lieutenant here who is able to stand up, move to the corner of this, fire at the Morlock, and then move back. And that's a good use of the Lieutenant order, because again, he's got nothing to threaten me with. He's got nothing that can really jump into my deployment zone and go after him. So that's what happens with the Lieutenant, firing a combi rifle at the Morlock there. In other news, Myrmidon moving through towards the objective room, moving up the stairs with the Xenotech in tow, and we're going to try and get the Xenotech into the room. Elsewhere, Scarface, seeing that he's got no long-range guns, he's got no HMGs, that kind of thing, and the Panzerfaust is down, just moving out to this corner, so he's got an aero line past this vehicle and up on top of this this platform here, where my opponent may be sending the Taskmaster to go after the building in the later game. So just a really nice position for Scarface to be in. You know, he's probably going to have good odds against most things in this Nomads list that's going to shoot him. And if he does take wounds, he just falls back into cover. Cordelia revives him, that kind of thing. So feeling good. Okay, so we have moved the Xenotech into the room and placed the data scan and just hung out with the Myrmidon, really, and not done too much else. My opponent at this stage now moving out in his next turn 2, with his War Core, trying to get the same done, moving in with the Xenotech to get his own multi-scanner placed. He ends up having to go prone and just get it in there, just because I think there's an ARO he was worried about, possibly the sniper standing back up again or something problematic for him. So just hanging out back here. Mary Problems moving up under cover of this truck, and she's going to be trying to press this button, but also laying some repeaters with her pitcher. So she does attempt that, coming around the side here and getting a repeater throw over here. And the point of getting that repeater there is that my HVT is further down the road, and there's a special classified that can be completed by doing this. I can't remember what classified that was because I don't think he ended up doing it. But one problem is that I think if it's something that requires a hack onto the enemy HVT, the rules might actually say hacking area, or they might say zone of control. So depending which it is, you may or may not be able to get that classified. But I don't know which classified it was, so he probably was able to achieve it, right? So there you go, Mary Problems, represented by, of course, the Shazvasti new special character, whatever her name is, and grabs the button here. Okay, now due to my forgetfulness, I have not removed Pywell from the board, which means that there's an opening here for Zoe to actually send a Zonbot around and repair Pywell, which is exactly what happens. I had previously moved my my Krakot up here, but now he can get shot at by Pywell and the combi rifle, so this is kind of bad. Losing the Krakot potentially against Pywell here, and even if Pywell gets unlucky, there's a bot there ready to repair it, right? So he goes after that. I think the Krakot's dodging at this point. Can't 100% remember what the situation was. It's hard for me to recall what happened in this game, but I think what's happened here is that he's had a very, very quiet turn 2. Like, he spent a lot of orders on Mary Problems, and a lot of his models have died anyway. Like, he was missing an order from Pywell and from the Jaguar, maybe a couple of other things too, and just didn't really achieve very much. And I mean, some of the orders were spent on Mary Problems. Some of them were spent like moving over there with the Zonbot in the first place and doing the revival. So I think he ends up, just reviving his bot and not actually shooting anything with it, which explains why the Morat Krakot is moving out to attack him and get him with the chain rifle, etc., the chest mine, etc. So it appears to be LF turn 2, which is pretty bad. Dakini TACbot now moving out and firing its HMG, I believe, at a long-range flash pulse here. I think there's a flash pulse bot, transconductors on in the corner, so I think that's what's happening here. Sorry about the gaps in my recollection, but that happens, and we can now move the Myrmidon, who'd been hiding out down here in little pits, as you can see, up on top of the platform. And what we're going to do is just come around the corner and try and chain rifle this bandit, just get rid of it. Now, I made a mistake here, and this is clumsy of me. I knew that the bandit would have a light shotgun, but I didn't spend an order to move the Dakini, and unfortunately he can now ARO with the the light shotgun, and that's going to cause a impact template coming out here and eliminating the Dakini, unfortunately, for free. So that's sad that I misplayed that, but it happened, and I chain rifle the bandit, and luckily for me the bandit goes down, and also luckily for me the Myrmidon passes the armor save. The Dakini does not, though, so I trade a Dakini for a bandit, which is fine. I'm happy with that, because now the room belongs to me, and I've got a Myrmidon in there, which is going to be kind of annoying for him to remove. So Myrmidon moves over here into his corner. Note that I still have a Mark II Assault Hacker there, ready to help him out with the fight for the room. The multi-scanner is indeed down. I think he's placed his multi-scanner as well. But now I've got a Myrmidon as the only thing in the room, and like next turn's going to be his turn 3, so like what do you do? The Naga, having collected this objective earlier, now moving up closer to the room, and we might be able to use it to lay some mines and do some fun stuff. In fact, it moves into the center and presses the button on the central objective. So this will mean that going into his third turn, he's going to need to do some button pressing to get back, and he's not going to be able to do a lot of fighting. I've already got the room, I've already got 3 objective points, and I've still got another 3 consoles, that is, and I've still got another turn after this. So pretty strong position for Aleph. Seeing that, things are pretty locked down, I'm moving the Naga out over here, laying a mine to cover this door, and laying a second mine behind him. This is a trick that I want you guys to learn from, is that this mine here can't detonate towards that door because my friendly model's blocking it. But later on, if this gets moved, then I can detonate it, like if I dodge, for example. So it's a good way of making sure he can't clear both mines with one, crazy koala or mad trap coming into the room, for example. So quite a fun tactic. Like, he comes in here, that mine detonates, and then next order, you dodge out of the way, and then there's another mine active. Also, it does protect you from people coming around that way as well. So I quite like this tactic here with mine placement. Okay, so this, I think, comes around to the Naga now, and Naga activating, standing back up, and firing long range at his other bot over there. He had some kind of bot at the back, and I think, just going back to his army list, I think that the missing points were probably some kind of extra flash pulse bot, and maybe the Morlocks had different profiles, or somebody had different profiles, so I think that there were a couple of flash pulse bots rather than one, but the sniper deals with a secondary one on that flank at long range. Going good. We also have Scarface now moving out to this point here. We have managed to render a Pywell unconscious, but Scarface moving into a position to just shoot 4 shots with the Mark 12 now and wreck it. As you can see, the Krakot went unconscious, but I believe Pywell did as well. But Scarface just ensuring that he can't keep reviving it. I don't want Pywell coming around the side here, so Scarface just setting up behind this cover here, blasting the corpse, and we can move on. Sniper also moving into position just to cover a very important part of the battlefield here where the objective room is there. Mary Problems is somewhere around here. And there's also a Jaguar Sniper who I can eliminate with this Naga quite easily. And just leaving him in a really rough spot for his final turn, knowing that there'll be one more turn for me as well. We have the Post-Human with submachine guns going to suppression fire. And that, my friends, is about it. So, final Nomad's turn. I think that he still hasn't placed the multi-scanner, so Xenotech now doing that. Luckily, he does manage to complete that. We do have the Scarface watching here, and if he's going to move out with his Taskmaster, he's going to get seen by Scarface as he comes up the stairs at some point, or vaults over this this planter. So Scarface is going to go be pew 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 with this Panzerfaust, and that Taskmaster can't afford to spend lots of orders just shooting me with a Red Fury, and I can afford to lose Scarface. He's not a big deal at this point. My opponent finally brings on this Spitfire. He does lament the fact that he can't drop him somewhere on the board like he was planning to with his EVA repeater bonus. That's a bit of a lack of foresight really with this mission, preventing him from being able to do that. Luckily for him, though, he's able to drop down behind the position of the Post-Human and shoot him in the back with a Spitfire, which happens, but it only really puts me into NWI, and it's really only soaking up orders that he does sort of need to use on the scenario. Missile launcher over here, having a go, I believe, at the in desperation at the Naga, and I can't quite remember what this interaction was, but the missile launcher, I don't believe it did particularly much here. In fact, it may even have just gotten shot. We have Mary Problems who can now move up, possibly try and take that objective. Spitfire here who can't capture objectives. I don't know if I took a photo of it, but there was an interaction with the Taskmaster at some point who actually got shot by a Panzerfaust from Scarface. But Mary Problems moving in now, using her ODD and her SMG to try and deal with this this boy here, but not really possible to fully deal with them. And that's really all he can do. The Taskmaster does get destroyed, I think, back in this situation as he's moving up towards the building. And sadly, Nomad efforts have culminated in 3 turns being used. Aleph still has an entire turn to go, but I don't need to do anything with my turn. I've already got the majority of the consoles. I've already controlled the middle room. I've planted the multi-scanner. Best I can do is grab, one classified, which is what I'm setting out to do. So Joe actually trying to move out here and do something or other, goes back inside the tag, tries shooting at the Spitfire, just gaining a few points. I'm revealing the Mark II Hacker, not that I needed it, I just want to have its points on the board for scoring purposes. Naga's moving across here just because it's trying to get in range of this HVT for the classified objective. Other than that, though, you know, that's about it. And you know, you can for people who are doubting, you can sort of see why, you know, taking second turn is quite good in this matchup, in this mission, and generally if you feel confident, you know. This game went without a hitch. I had barely any damage done to me because I, you know, deployed quite carefully and defensively. I had a reasonably defensive list. My list was very good at mission completion, and I was just able to sort of pick them apart in the long game. You can see my lieutenant actually leaning out and just shooting this Spitfire boy here, because there's no way that the lieutenant can die and lose his points because he's got NWI, and at best I can combi rifle this Spitfire, which I believe is what happens. So really it was just like a points clear up effort at the end, but it was a major victory to Aleph, as you guys can see by the end of it. And yeah, good game. I don't know if I want to offer my opponent any tips other than the fact that the list isn't so much a problem, it's just, you know, what you're going to be doing with the list and what the purpose of the list is. I mean, this strikes me as a list that's pretty good at utility and mission completion, but what if you're put in that situation like I just put you in, where, you know, you have to take the first turn and you have to get a lot done by the end of the game? What are you going to use to damage your opponent? Well, I mean, the Hellcat's one way of doing it, but there's not too much else there. The Morlocks, they're only going to get so much done. The Taskmaster is not going to win every face-to-face roll. He's going to have a tough time getting across the battlefield and getting those really juicy kills. So with Nomads, I mean, the way I play Nomads is, let's just do this right now. I mean, I know that you guys want me to do a Nomad sectorial review one day, but that's not really in the pipeline for a while. But just going through how I personally feel about Nomads, it's going to be something like this. Go to Hecklers, you take the Jammers, sure. Take a Dactari because you need to revive your Intruder. You take the Crackot Renegades. There's so many reasons why that they are excellent, right? Mary Problems, you know, you don't necessarily need her, but she's quite popular, and you can grab her if you want to. Counterintelligence, 12 points, Cheerleader, perfect. A lot of people take a Lieutenant Tunguska, you know, Interventor. Why not? You know, that's fine. You know, you can do that. And then you go through, you grab probably an Intruder with a multi-sniper. There's no reason why you can't have a Hellcat. You've got to have something to attack with, you know, fast attack wise. I quite like the Moira HMG for my attack piece, but a lot of other people prefer the Kriza Borak, right? And that's your first control group, and then you can fill out the second group with, you know, the cheap guys. So you've got the Transconductors, a couple of them. You've got the Morlocks, take a couple of them with the Assault Pistol, for example. Maybe you take a Jaguar in there. And then you can sort of mix and match. Maybe you want a Morlock instead, or like a Spectre instead, rather, or Moran, that kind of thing. And this kind of list has a couple of things which are very reliable at sweeping, you know, the Naga Sniper or whatever it may be. They've still got pretty reliable specialists in there. You've got great defense in terms of the Heckler. If the Hecklers are near the objective room, you know, me coming in there with a Murminol, whatever it may be, you know, you've got the Jammer to whip out. And it's just a bit more of a standardized list, but, you know, people like to write unique lists, just as long as you know what you're doing with them. Like we saw that Vertigo goes on, didn't really do much, and in most games it's not, so we need to sort of either question why it's there in the first place, or do more in the game to try and get value out of it by, like, throwing a picture with Mary Problems next to my Diva Lieutenant, and then lobbing the missiles down on top of that. Just that kind of thing, you know. Cool, alright, well, we've got one more game to go. I'll see you tomorrow for that one. Stick around for it. It's a really exciting game for the finale. Don't miss it. Really looking forward to showing you guys how that one goes. And then on the weekend, we'll be talking about O12, so look out for that.